with the legislature to help to lobby to get the construction funding of this project pulled back to the 25-27 biennium. It's currently in the 2029 plus outer years, which means it could be in 2029 or it could be in like 2050, right? So that's where it sits right now, and that's $25 million of construction funding that's currently programmed there. So Brian is working really hard to get to work with Senator Hansen to get that funding pulled back. The other part of this is a couple weeks ago, we applied for additional design funding in the amount of about $500,000, and that design funding would be to help with the design cost overages that we have on the project. And the last thing is, my understanding is that the House and the Senate budgets are supposed to be out on the 19th and the 21st. I heard that with PSRC, Transportation Policy Board, last week. So as of Thursday last week, that's what they're thinking. So we'll know a lot more about both of these two items when those budgets come out. So I'm going to hand it over to Steve to talk a little bit about the WSDOT field test.
Hey, good evening, council members. So a lot of information up there on that slide. And just as background, WSDOT is responsible for inspecting thousands of bridges across the state as part of our national bridge inspection standards that we're required to do at least every 2 years. Warren Avenue Bridge is certainly one of those bridges. And we were struggling to provide your staff, your team here with, I would say, credible, crisp information on the capabilities of our current fleet. And so what you see up there on those graphics is one of the best ways to do that is take the gear out there and actually see what you can do. So you're looking at a mock up there with 2x4s and that frame that template that was built. Summarizing, our current equipment can do a clear reach of about 10 feet. And so whatever bike shared use path can be accommodated within a 10-foot clear reach is certainly capable with our existing equipment. Anything larger than a 10-foot clear reach would require a larger machine. So that's kind of depicted in these pictures. I know it says 10'6" in that bottom right. That's measured from the center of the barrier there. So if you think of it as the truck rolling up and putting its tires, close to the curb, we need to have some room on the outboard where the bucket is. Things bounce around. We don't want to be hard up against any future rail. It's a 10-foot clear reach. And so depending on what the design looks like for the rails, both traffic rail and the pedestrian rail, generally maybe 7.5, 8 feet of path could be accommodated with the existing machine. And then turning to some other limitations, and they're bulleted out there. Widening the bridge greater than 5 feet clear for a 5-foot clear pathway. Think of that as an 8-foot clear reach. Really limits our ability to get up inboard on the girders. It also limits our ability to reach the center line of the bridge. So it's introducing some other limitations in terms of what our capabilities are. That would so the outboard, what you're seeing in that picture on the right, getting up in that space is not possible if we widen more than an 8-foot clear. And so catwalk modifications would be required. Likewise, if the pathway exceeds in that lower left-hand corner there, you can see the blue line and the red line. Those are mimicking, the red line is mimicking our existing fleet. The blue line is a larger machine that has a greater reach out and over. It has the same boom length. So it actually limits how far we can reach underneath the bridge. So depending on what scenarios are looked at here, it's going to require modification to the outboard catwalks in finding a way to get access to the center line of the bridge.
Thank you, Steve. So how does this impact alternative X? Well, I mean, the very first thing, which I think we knew already, and this is not new news, is that a new U-bit would be required to help inspect the alternative X. And the A62T has the reach to be able to do that. The second thing that Steve just talked about was there's additional inspection mitigation that's going to be required for this bridge in terms of adding catwalks to the bridge. Now, there are existing catwalks on the bridge that run parallel along the roadway on both sides of the bridge. However, the existing catwalks are low. They're not as close as what they need to be to the girder face to provide an arm's reach. They're currently 5 feet away right now, and they don't meet OSHA WISHER requirements. And so on the catwalk itself, there would need to be a catwalk adjacent to the inside of the girder, and an inspector would need to have arm's distance reach to that girder to be able to inspect that girder. And these catwalks, here's a quick proposed preliminary plan that we put together, our structural engineer put together on the catwalks. The top exhibit that is labeled catwalks to be removed. You can see the location of the catwalks and where they're at currently on the bridge. And like I was saying, they're 5 feet away from the edge of the girder face. They're too low, then too far away from the girder to be able to be used effectively for inspecting the bridge. And so we had our structural engineer take a look and see, well, what would be needed, and to put catwalks on the bridge that met the inspection needs, and that's the exhibit down below on the bottom. This is new catwalks to be installed. And so for alternative X, the issue is that the U-bit is not able to get to the center line of the bridge. So there's going to be a center line catwalk that it would be required to be able to inspect the beams along the center line of the bridge, and then there's a catwalk on both sides of the bridge on the inside of the girder that would be needed to be able to properly inspect alternative X. Now, we took a look at alternative X from a structural feasibility as part of bringing it up to the level of what we took a look at for all the rest of the alternatives. And last time I reported to council that there were some bridge load rating concerns, how there could be additional pedestrian live weight that Washout was considering adding to the structural evaluation of the bridge, and that has gone away. Washout has decided that that's not something that they want to pursue on this bridge. So that's a good thing. And what that means is that the load rating for the bridge would still needs to be evaluated as we go design, but we're not anticipating members on the bridge to be strengthened because of that loading. So that's a good thing. We sorted that out. On the seismic retrofit criteria, as I mentioned in October, there is a allowed 10% increase in overall structure weight that we have as a threshold, and anything over that 10% increase would require seismic retrofit. And so we took a look at this criteria for alternative X, and we can be within that threshold where we don't need seismic retrofit for alternative X. So that's also a good thing. But the thing that we had to do was there's some concessions that we had to make in the preliminary design for this, and those concessions are listed right up here. That means that we would have to make the barriers on the proposed alternative X be lightweight concrete, and we would have to provide steel framing for the catwalks, or there could be another lightweight alternative that we would have to consider for the catwalks under the bridge. And then finally, the sidewalk material itself, sidewalk expansion material, would need to be made of some sort of lightweight material. And we are thinking that that could be a steel type material or a fiberglass reinforced polymer material. And the fiberglass reinforced polymer material is kind of interesting. There's a picture up here. This picture is of the Bainbridge Island ferry terminal. I'm not sure if anybody's made it over there recently, but they just completed this pedestrian walkway. And on this pedestrian walkway is the fiberglass reinforced polymer material. So if you want to get a feel for what that looks like, that's out there now. It's currently open on Bainbridge Island. So you can take a look at that. But these are the types of materials that we will be looking at using as we go through the design of this project in order to ensure that we stay underneath that weight requirement. So there are some limitations and some things that we need to do to make that happen. So now I'm going to get into the project schedule and cost update for the project. The part everybody I'm sure is waiting for. I went ahead and updated the project schedule as of this month and kind of sort of where we sit. And we're finishing up the feasibility analysis with that updated memo, which we hope to have available and published in the next couple of weeks. And I'm looking at having there be May of this year to be able to start design. So I'm really working hard with our consultants to get these contracts finalized, and I'm hoping to go to council sometime in April to get council to look at these and hopefully approve them, so I can move forward with the design. But what this means is that if I start design in May of this year, it's going to be about a 2-year design and permitting process to get this done. And what that means is that pushes us out into 2026 as an advertisement date to be underway with construction. We are anticipating a 2-year construction window on this project, and that's also reflected up here. And what that could change depending on the permitting requirements. We have a cormorant nesting window that we may have to deal with on this bridge that we just don't, it's something that we'll figure out as we go through it. But that's something that we'll need to consider. And then also the year of implementation for moving this. It was when I came to council in October of last year. We're anticipating that we'd be within 25, and that's obviously shifted to 26 depending on how we're proceeding right now. The other last thing to keep in mind here is there was an option for us to consider barging of the construction equipment and materials, and somehow leave that open for the contractor to do that work. But what that would have done is the environmental permitting on that would have taken us years to complete. And so we had to we are planning to proceed with permitting on the project, assuming that most of the work that's going to be done on the bridge is going to be done with scaffolding, basically building scaffolding underneath the bridge and doing all that work from the bridge itself. That's able to have us bring the construction advertisement back to where we see it right here. So here we go into the project cost update. I'm going to go into preliminary engineering, and I'll talk through the U-bit procurement, and I'll go into construction. What you see before you right here is basically a comparison where what I presented to you in October, where we sit right now today, and just walking through what the changes are of what has changed and why. And so the main items that we have right here: the feasibility study with city administration costs, WSDOT structural and geotech design. We have civil design consultant costs as well. And so the changes on here, that the major changes is the feasibility study. We had a little bit of additional work to finish up the evaluation of alternative X, and the evaluation of the project due to the field test results that Steve just described. I was able to work a little bit with WSDOT structural and geotech design to bring the cost down there. We refined the geotech scope, and that was able to bring the cost down a little bit there, which is good. Refining it and reducing costs, that's a good thing. So overall, with the preliminary engineering on this, we originally reported about 2.37 million in October, and right now it's looking like we're coming in at 2.265. So keep in mind, I still have some contracts I'm still working on to negotiate, but that's kind of sort of where we sit right now with this. There's a couple notes down below that provide additional information. I won't go through all of that. I think the one thing to note on this is that our current PE design funding that we have is $1.5 million, and we're coming in at 2.26. So that's about a $765,000 overage for design on this project. And I talked a little bit about the legislature earlier in the presentation. There is an ask for $500,000 to help out to partially cover that gap, but we won't know about that for another couple of The next is the U-bit. And so this has changed a little bit since I came to you in October of last year and updated you then. The biggest change here is that we got an updated cost on the U-bit from WashDOT from their conversations with TEF, and the U-bit cost is 1.123 million. And what I ended up doing was I ended up inflating that to the year of expenditure of when we're going to be purchasing that capital cost, which is 2026. One thing to note is when I talked about costs and I talked about construction in UBIT in October of last year, at that point in time, we were anticipating an inflation cost of about 6%. We went through and took a look at the construction cost indices, the current ones, and the construction cost indices have indicated that inflation has gone down to about 3.25%. So I've updated the construction dollars to be able to reflect that here. So that brought the cost down on some of this. Even though the cost has increased for the UBIT, for example, the inflation cost brought it down a little bit. So, but overall for the capital cost of UBIT, we're looking at a $100,000 increase from what I reported in October for that. And that's mainly the current cost of UBIT plus inflating it out another year to the year of expenditure of 2026. We have city administration costs and consultant contract procurement costs that are included in the PE for the project. And the operations and maintenance cost is, Steve can talk to this a little bit here, but there's 2 years of operations and maintenance costs that were provided to us by the DOT. It's considered a worst case scenario, but it would be the cost to be able to provide operations and maintenance for the UBIT to incorporate it into WashDOT's fleet. And that is estimated about $370,000 a year. And that's a worst case scenario. And Steve can talk to that in a little bit. And so overall, the cost on the UBIT has increased by about $840,000 from October. Steve, do you want to say anything about the operations cost?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, I think we were hoping not excuse me, not to have to pass along any operational costs for the ownership of the UBIT. But I don't want to belabor this, but we basically rent our equipment to ourselves. It's called our Transportation Equipment Fund. We call it TEF. And it takes into account the cost of ownership of equipment. And in this case, our bridge division, they don't have any extra budget to absorb an additional asset into their budget. And the legislature's not, we would have to get more money basically from the legislature through either our TEF fund or directly as a normally, if this were, for example, if this were our project, we would be saying the cost of this project is now 700 higher. That is a worst case number. I mean, that number assumes that every hour that there are no, so typically if we bring this new UBIT, any new piece of equipment into our fleet, if we can utilize it, for example, if our maintenance team needs to use it for a week, if we can start assimilating it into our fleet, we would not pass those costs on. So this is worst case from the standpoint. It assumes at current rates, every hour it gets zero utilization elsewhere. So that won't be the number. I'm confident that won't be the number, but we can't give you a number either that is accurate without knowing how we're going to assimilate it into our fleet. The other thing I would say is we certainly don't think carrying it beyond 2 years is. I mean, we need to figure it. If this piece of equipment gets bought, we need to figure out how to get it into our fleet. Either get rid of another piece of equipment, or it gives us time to go through another budget cycle and ask for a cost increase to keep the equipment. So I hope that helps.
Steve. So moving on from, and there'll be plenty of times for questions at the end of this. So we have a couple of slides left. I'll run through these and we'll open up to questions. So the next update is the construction costs that we have on the project. And I already walked through the inflation, the updates to inflation. The major thing that you'll see here is the construction contract cost went up by $1.7 million. And that was basically adding the catwalks into the project is what that was. Now it's kind of a little misleading because we added about $2.8 million in catwalk costs. That's for removal of the existing catwalks and building the outer and the center catwalks into the project. But the inflation went down, so the overall resulting amount ended up being about 1.7 million. And so the other thing that we ended up doing here is that when I reported to you in October, we were thinking that this job would be under advertisement in 2025, but that has shifted to 2026. So it's an extra year that of inflation that we're accounting for here. A couple of things to note about the construction costs. We do have a 25% construction contingency. That's a standard practice. And it takes into account all those items that we can't estimate and quantify right now as part of the project. And so that's pretty standard. But I wanted to make sure that everybody's aware of that. The overlooks are estimated at about approximately 300,000. They are included in this estimate. And then the other thing is we do have an art and placemaking elements line item in here that's estimated about $275,000. So that's a construction. So what does this all mean? Tying this all together, I went through a couple different slides here. So this what we're all leading down to is that the overall project cost that we're estimating right now is just over $30 million. We have a budget of 26.5, so that leaves a gap of about just over $4 million on the project. We were pretty cognizant of we assumed that this project would be built in 2026. We assumed that the construction dollars would be brought back to 2026 in line with where we can advertise the project. However, if that's not the case, and what we're looking at is approximately $750,000 per year, and it would go up incrementally of every year that we don't deliver this project from 2026. So that's just a sobering thought, but thought I would put that data point on your radar. I talked a little bit again, legislative requests. We'll find out more in a couple weeks what that looks like. And a couple considerations for council on this is I talked about Council Resolution 3363 with the option of widening the path on the west side of the bridge greater than 8 feet if budget was available. We didn't include any additional sidewalk width on that west side as part of these estimates. So it's something to consider if council wants to do that. There's also overlooks on the west side of the bridge. If budget was available, we did include the overlooks in the cost of the estimate. So if council wanted to leave those in, to remove those, that is a consideration. And then the other thing that we can think of to put on the chopping block if needed is the art and placemaking elements. If that was something that could help out with the cost, then that would be another consideration as well. And that's estimated about 270 to 300K, depending on the inflation. Okay, so next steps for us, City of Bremerton, and what we plan on doing. We have the scope and fee negotiations with our civil consultant and also with WashDOT. We'll continue to work with the legislature and to try to reprogram the construction funding, and then to get the additional design money, and then I'll be happy to have future briefings with council after the legislative session and as we go through the design of this project. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Weber, Mr. Rourke. Anna, did you have a question? Can you put your mic on so that the public can hear you? Thank you.
I asked Mr. Weber to stay on this slide. I am more than a bit disappointed that we spent all this time and all this money And then finally discovered late in the game that the only width that could be added without buying a U-bit was 8 feet. And there was different correspondence going between the city and WashDOT on that. And so now not only are we having to buy a U-bit if we decide to go over 8 feet, which I'm sure that's what the public wants, is over 8 feet. But now everything's costing us more because there's an extra year plus that just was wasted. And I'm sure I'm sure WashDOT and city staff wish that the test of the U-bit had been done in the first month of this project instead of everybody guessing. But it is pretty frustrating that now our costs are going to be so much higher because of this wasted time.
Jane, did you have a question for them? This is a Q&A, so just.
Yeah, right now that's a comment. When we go around again, I'll have a question.
Okay. And I'm sorry, Jeff, were you next? Yeah, go right ahead.
No, thank you, Council President. Comment and a question. Echo the frustration, but glad we're moving forward with what we have now. One clarification on the resolution is it doesn't specify overlooks if budget is available. It specified more overlooks if budget is available beyond the initial number that were included with alternative one. So I just wanted to make that clear. But I do recognize they're probably one of the few design elements besides the art that could be taken out at this stage. Are there any other elements to the project that are at this point kind of more optional, or is it just the overlooks and the art design?
The items that I mentioned there are the ones that are more of the optional type elements. All the other elements on there are structural. It's lighting. It's a very, very minimal tie-ins on both sides of the bridge. And so all elements that are either safety elements or elements germane to the basis of the project that aren't optional.
Okay, fantastic. And the 300,000 cost for the overlooks, was that for the 4 that are specified in alternative 1?
That was for 2 overlooks.
2, okay.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I think technically the wording of the resolution is taking that west side of alternative 1, which I believe had 4 specified, but okay, so that's good to know that 300 is for 2. So it's hard to cut more out there. Okay. And then Director Work, appreciate you being here. I know we've had some conversations on the ability to rent a U-bit. And I know we don't have to rehash them, but I just kind of want to know if that is something we can continue the conversation on as we go forward several years, or if in your opinion, that's a complete dead end that WashDOT's unwilling to look at further. Okay. I think the good news is, again, the only difference between the 62 and the 62T is really going from about 60,000 to 70,000 pounds. So I would just have to expect that slight extra weight would not prohibit use on the majority of bridges across the western region of Washington. But I appreciate you giving us kind of the worst case scenario for the city owning and operating it. In that case, that WashDOT can't use it. If we own it and WashDOT's maintaining it, do we have a city have the option to rent it out to other jurisdictions, including in-state or out of state? Okay. Well, we're paying for the. Okay. Gotcha. Makes sense. Okay. If it was able to be rented out for a net revenue that goes beyond the cost of the U-bit, I just want to see, is that you think ever a possibility, or? Okay, so you don't, so WashDOT doesn't rent it out to any other jurisdiction.
I mean, I can't say we haven't. I know we've helped out Oregon in a pinch, other states in a pinch,
Okay.
and I'm sure they reimburse us. But as a practical matter, we don't rent it out for revenue.
Okay, thanks, that helps. I think that's all I have for now. Just appreciate that whether it was 10 and 10 or 8 and 12, all these extra costs is what we'd be incurring. So we'll keep moving forward together. Thank you.
I just want to recognize I saw a lot of negotiation that's taken place in these changes. And I saw a lot of give and take, and I know I'm not the only council member that still has some resentment about the fact that we have to buy a piece of equipment that WashDOT is going to own and use. But I take great stock in the fact that it will be used by other municipalities and for other bridges and making a better state. Aside from that, I just see a lot of give and take. And I personally see you coming back after hearing us and trying your darndest to make it work. And that more than anything is what I appreciate. I do have one question, and I was reminded just today as I was thinking about this bridge. Have we just let go of the idea to have it be one-sided, to have that path on one side? I'm not remembering what the decision was, if we did decide that, or whether maybe we wanted. I know now I remember Michael Goodnow wanting things to be balanced and equal access on each side or something like that. I think that was, anyway, we're just pushing forward with seeing whatever we can do for both sides is the plan right now. We're not even considering a one-sided option anymore. Is that completely off the table?
So we've been really just focused on alternative X and getting that to a point where we can be back and having the conversation about alternative X. We haven't looked into, I mean, even though we're updating the memo and we're getting updated information that updates the other alternatives, we've been just really focused on this at this point, unless there's some will by council for us to take a look into the other options again. But this is what we're focused on. This is what we're trying to deliver.
You've made it really close. I think you've crunched numbers about as much. You've probably gone through that process a few times. I know that process, and I think you did a great job with this. I mean, it's the next step, right, in the process. And so I feel encouraged by it. I was scared that I was going to come in and hear, nope, can't be done. Nope. So I'm pleasantly surprised and appreciate the work that you all did, because I can see a lot of negotiation. So thank you.
Anna?
I feel like I should say, WashDOT, I'm so happy you're here, just for the shock value of it for you. We are happy that you're here. I've got a couple of questions about the bridge. As you know, I was there for white knuckling it through the U-bit test. One of the concerns that was brought up at that time was that some of the patches on the bridge deck itself go all the way through. So I was wondering if there's going to be any, major renovation of the deck itself at the same time.
So I can speak to part of this, and maybe Steve, if you want to chime in. I do know a couple years ago we did have a conversation with the DOT about redecking the bridge, and then there's another painting project that was anticipated at some point in time. But it was decided a couple years ago that those projects were in the future, and that those projects would not be included as part of this project. And I don't know where they sit right now in terms of what year that they would get done. And Steve, I'm not sure if you have anything to add to that.
Well, I can just say that It's certainly on our 10-year bridge list of needs. We look at painting systems, substructures, superstructures, joints, that sort of thing. It's not funded. That's the short answer.
Okay,
It's a need. We
That-
recognize it.
that sounds like something that's not going to happen until it's funded, though.
Correct.
All right. Second question was, you said that you needed a 10-foot clear reach. That's the maximum width, even with the A62T. Do I have that correctly?
No, that was just for the A62.
Okay.
With the field test that was done
The
by Washington.
A62T will give you the 15-foot, but the
Correct.
boom is still the same length. The
rest
vertical
of the
part.
boom.
Yeah. So there's one, the boom that goes from the truck out over, that boom lengthens.
Right.
But the rest of it is, my understanding, stays the same.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is that if on the many graphics that you showed us, you know how there's barriers on either side of the walkway. If the inner barrier were removable for inspection, would that make inspection easier and possibly allow us to use a regular A62?
I think that so I think the barrier that you're talking about is the inner barrier between the traffic and the walkway, correct?
Yes.
So that traffic barrier, I don't think so. I don't think that would be something that would be feasible, because that barrier needs to be traffic rated. So what needs to happen is that it needs to be designed for a vehicle to hit it for that impact. The problem that you get with that barrier is that barrier is going to need to be a custom designed barrier. It's going to need to be integrated in with the bridge deck in order to make it the strength to allow a vehicle to hit it. So I don't think that's going to be something that's going to be able to be done to have it be removable and still meet those requirements for a vehicle hitting it. That's going to be, I don't think, feasible for that, for this.
Darn.
I wish it were. I mean, thinking outside the box.
And it was my understanding that the reason we can't simply have the walkway, the multimodal pathway on one side was for ADA access. WashDOT required it to be on at a minimum to serve ADA requirements on both sides of the bridges. Was that correct?
That's correct. Yes, we did coordinate with WashDOT on that. The scope of the project is to upgrade for ADA on both sides of the bridge. And when we talked to WashDOT, it was that you can't just widen one side and leave the other one that's not ADA accessible. So that kicked us into widening both sides to be ADA accessible at minimum.
Okay, and I'm sure other people who are more familiar with it are going to talk at greater length about the ADA access and bicycle access, connecting it to the bike trails, and the staircases, not so much ADA. Thank you. Oh, before I stop, thank you for the presentation. I wish we had it on our computers because a lot of that type was quite small.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you. I'll be sure to get it to you so that you have it, and in the future make that type a little bit bigger so everybody can read it.
Or
So,
just send
thanks.
it to us before the meeting, whichever
Can
is
do
more
that too.
convenient. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
All right. So I just want to be super clear. So what we're looking at is needing the larger U-bit and all the catwalks.
That's correct.
Okay. And that's with a 12-foot. What's X?
Yeah. So alternative X has 12 feet on one side.
Okay.
Yes. And the new U-bit would be required to be able to reach over that 12-foot sidewalk, because the existing U-bit can't reach over that.
To basically get folks into to access the catwalk.
But no, the U-bit. So there's two things happening. So the girder itself. So there's basically two planes on the girder. There's the inside plane and
Yeah.
then there's the outside plane. And WashDOT needs to be able to be within arm's reach of all of it. So both the outside and the inside. And so the catwalks are going to be required because that will allow them inside on the inside part of that girder to reach on the inside. So that's why the catwalks are needed there. Now the U-bit allows them to get up over the sidewalk and down underneath to be able to get along the outside of the girder to inspect that. So the U-bit is still needed to be able to meet the inspection.
So
on that
the
side.
sort of the visible pieces that we could see from a boat, like
Correct,
this.
yes.
Well, I guess we could see it all from a boat. But okay, so then a question about the bottom drawing there. There's only a catwalk on one side.
There's a
So how does the other side of that center, the center line catwalk? So right there. So how is there a beam there?
yeah, there's a beam right up above, right in through
Okay, so it's not like I was thinking it was like a big
here. Oh no.
beam this way. It's just
Yeah, they're just smaller beams.
okay.
That are inner part of the bridge. The two larger beams are on the outside, and you can see them right here. There's one here,
Okay.
yeah, and then one here, and then these guys right here are all smaller beams along the inside of the bridge that need to be inspected. So those are the other elements.
And how are those inspected?
So the center line one will be able to get the center line beam right here.
Yeah.
These catwalks may be able to get these ones right in through here, but there's the U-bit will be able to come up right in through here to help inspect everything else up in.
Okay. So then that brings up the question, why do we need the outer catwalks, the left and right sort of catwalks, if the U-bit can in fact access those?
Well, the U-bit can't access the inner part of that girder.
So
right
that's
there.
just too close for it to get
Yeah,
up.
so
Okay.
what happens is the angles in U-bit have to come up, and there's actually a picture on here that actually shows that a little bit. So this picture right here on the right kind of sort of shows that this was taken with the mock-up in place, and you can see that this knuckle right here, this is the maximum the closeness it can get to the girder itself. So you can see that that you can't, unless this knuckle can come up right underneath this
Okay.
girder and go right up in, then they can inspect it then. But that's not the case with these wider sidewalks. It's going to be an angled. You can only get at this at an angle. So the catwalk here would need to be moved over in
Okay.
order to provide that
Okay.
reach.
It's okay.
It can't curl back up inside.
And, so also when we talk about the funding for the U-bit, I mean, the funding's pretty much coming from the state. Yes.
The funding is coming.
Greg, do you have that kind of money? Are you buying a U-bit or who's, okay. So I just want to you know, I'm not buying it. Anyways, I mean, we're going to have to get funding for this. So, and it's just the cost of doing this kind of business. We have to make sure it can be inspected. So okay.
And I think just to follow along with that, the cost right now for that unit is within the project cost.
Yeah.
That's where it sits.
Yeah. And so, but I meant as far as like, we're not per se buying it and we're not putting a bow on it and driving it down to Olympia. It's going to be, it's going to show up at their, well, the taxpayers
Right.
might be, but,
Right.
it's going to be a state asset from
So-
day one.
So we with the city will need to put together procurement documents for it. We'll
Mhm.
need to procure it, and then somehow, some way, which we still need to work with Wash on, how do we transfer it once we procure it and get it to them? That
Have to pay taxes first.
All right.
those details need to be worked
All right.
out.
Thanks. That's all I have right now.
Eric, you're next in line. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm not going to talk a lot. Executive summary, are we within budget or is the city expected to contribute more money?
We're not in budget.
Okay,
Right
and the delta is?
The delta is just over 4 million.
Right, that's what I thought it said on the slide. Now, if we went with the 8 foot and on each side, we'd be within budget?
I don't know the answer to that right now. We are happy to get back with you on that question, but I don't have the answer at this point in time.
So the question is, I think construction indicators in 2026.
Correct.
If we're supposed to come up with the shortfall, when are we going to be put on official notice? We have to come up with $4 million. And how do we come up with $4 million? I'd like to hear from our finance director. I don't think the city has the capacity to do that. So I'm sorry, we have to face reality at some point. You can have this on your wish list, but if the 8-foot option, no, people aren't going to like to hear it. People that are listening to this thing is, oh, Eric, what are you doing? This is what we want. This is what we want. I'm sorry, we have fiscal restraints. I think we have to face reality. So if we can do this within budget and there's no way for us to make up the $4 million difference, you have to face reality at some point.
Okay. Okay, I wish I would have been able to go for this U-bit fitting. I'm actually over here trying to calculate how I can have a bake sale for the $4.645 million. I think that's a lot of cookies I got to sell to help y'all out. So I'm sorry, I can't help either. But just to clarify on the A62 versus A62T, if we just were to do the catwalk removal and replacement with the A62 fit with a 10-foot sidewalk. There's the last part of that question.
Okay. So with a 10-foot sidewalk, the question is, would the existing U-bit fit with catwalks? Is that the question? And 10-foot, do you mean 10-foot clear width?
Yes.
Okay. So the existing U-bit would not be able to inspect a sidewalk of that width.
Got it. 8 foot, it would.
Correct.
Okay. I want to push back on something. Somebody, counselor said there was wasted time, but we can't really spend any money on this yet until it's allocated by the state, right? I guess I'm not really understanding the wasted time component, because the 25 million that we were allocated by the state, we don't have got it in our coffers yet. It's still at the state. And as a matter of fact, there was a reorganization. Legislature reorganized the governor's funding to push it out and made this schedule for us. So, we really couldn't, am I wrong? We really, even if you came out a year earlier, we still couldn't really begin the design of the bridge, right?
There's we can start design of the bridge now with the funding that we have. However, the consideration to make there is that the funding for the design is falling short of our costs for design at this point in time. Now the complication is because the construction funding is out in 2029 plus. There need to be some action to move that back for us to be able to utilize it, or else.
So,
the design we would start now, we'd be complete in 2 years, but if we don't have the construction funding, then it's all stopped. And we don't.
So, and I got to say, I'm not positive. I'm not looking positively that you're going to be moved up in the biennium to this next biennium. And Councillor Coughlin and Councillor Mockler were with me when we went and lobbied last week over in Olympia. And we heard a lot of support for, getting, helping, our unhoused folks and the vulnerable folks. But what we kept hearing over and over, and counselors can, you guys are welcome to chime in on your own, but we kept hearing there's not transportation dollars. There's not transportation dollars. So I just want to put it out there that I'm worried because, and Councillor Mockler, let me just, and so if you want to clarify, I'll just call on you next after I'm done with a couple questions, if that's all right. But I'm just nervous because if you're talking about 760 exponential, I mean, not exponentially, but compound interest on that inflation rate, I'm just nervous about the cost. We're already over projected budget with 2026. So, Mr. Riley, I know. I'm sorry to bother you back there in the corner. He likes to sit back there because he's like, just don't call on me. But
Come on up, Mike.
I sat in the back of the class too, buddy. I know why we're back there. I honestly, I mean, I'm gonna just buy everybody pizza. If I'm wrong about moving up to this next biennium. I just don't predict it's happening. But pizza party on me if it does, because I'll be so happy. And I think everybody else will be too. But Mr. Riley, that 4.65, 4.64 project, I mean, 25% contingency, great. But what are some funding sources?
So to be blunt, right now, we don't have any identified funding sources to fund that gap right now.
Okay. Okay. So can I just the last thing I'll ask, and then I'll wait for my next round too, is can you explain, I know this is we're a little sore about this, but maybe we need to understand a little bit more about the O&M and the ownership of the UBIT by WashDOT, because I believe there's a trade-off, right? Because we have some costs of 370,000 a year. Can you please explain? I guess I don't understand this part of the deal. And so maybe somebody can explain how the ownership defers to you, to WashDOT. I mean, some of the money that's coming to us is WashDOT money out of this 25 million anyway, isn't it? Or can you explain that to me? Because it is your money and that's why you own the materials.
So the project's funded
Okay.
by, right? So it's the same money. If this was a WashDOT project, if we were delivering this project, we would be having the same conversation with ourselves. And the answer would be the same regardless. The way our transportation equipment fund is funded is they can't just go out and buy more equipment. We amortize our equipment, we replace it when it gets to a certain age or when we can afford it, when the rent pays to replace a sedan or a front end loader. Same thing with these U-bits. We would be having the same exact conversation and saying the project, well, we would have two conversations. We would say our capital project needs to pay for this piece of equipment, or we would be going to the legislature through a decision package or just an increase to say we need to buy this piece of equipment. In this case, I mean, the project is driving the need, and we WashDOT do not have the funds in our budget to pay for this. And we are obligated under national bridge inspection standards, the federal government inspect our bridges. And so we need the gear to do that. And so I think the need is clear, but it has to be paid for. And I guess the way I look at it, it's coming out of the transportation funds. I know this is a city project. It's being funded by the legislature.
Right. So I guess it's just kind of like, whose money is it? It's not, it's this, I mean, it's the taxpayers' money, it's the state's money. And so I'm kind of understanding a little bit more why, and I mean, what, I don't really know. Is there a precedent for renting out? I mean, like, Tom, is there somewhere we can put this U-bit in Bremerton? And then like, do we have the capacity to do a rental service? And what's the precedent for that in the state?
That'd be a whole new program. I mean, we don't want to be in the U-bit business. We
Right.
don't have qualified people to even use it or operate it. They go through special training.
Right.
We want nothing to do with the U-bit. It's not our bridge. Yeah, it's not our bridge. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not our bridge. It's the WashDOT bridge. Okay. That's all. And Councilor Malker, can I go ahead and defer to you because you wanted to clarify something? I mean, Anna, or sorry,
worries.
Vice President Malker. I apologize. Anna, how are you today? Thank you for being here.
Thanks. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents because we had the chance to lobby Representative Spencer Hutchins and Representative Greg Nance, the 26th and the 23rd. No, it's Spencer Hutchins. He's the
26th.
Okay, so I am right. Good. And they were both very dismissive about the possibility of the gap funding. They were like, well, we're going to shoot for it. But they were both quite strong with pushing everything they had to get this project moved forward. Senator Drew Hansen was very strong. I think you even mentioned him in your presentation. Senator Randall is deeply concerned about it as well. So moving the construction date forward, that seemed to have general support among our legislative slate, whereas acquiring the gap funding was more, nah. That's the only thing I wanted to add.
Jeff.
Jeff's good. And I forgot to thank both of you, I think earlier when I started. So thank you. Thanks. People giving the thanks. So going back to Eric's question, I think that was a really good one on the timeline and kind of steps forward. So however it shakes out, transportation budget is all in red at the moment. So we'll see what happens though. Again, fingers crossed. So we'll find that out when the budget's passed right in the next month or so. So from there, let's maybe just for, let's say we don't get in the 25-26 biennium, but they are able to move it up to 27-28. I'm looking kind of Eric's question, like when would we as a city owe money to get to the full project cost?
So there's two parts to this equation. The first part is being over budget on the design, and that funding would need to be looked at this year. I was going to be coming to council in about 2 months in April with the contracts to encumber that funding. So that's the immediate funding issue. The second funding issue I think they're referring to is the construction funding. We would be ready, assuming that we move forward with that this year, to be under construction in 2026. If at that point in time in 2026, that would be the point at which we would need the construction funding to have that in hand to be able to obligate that for our use. Now, if the funding is shifted back from 2029 plus to 2027, then what that means is that we have another year of inflation that we deal with, which means that we have another approximately $750,000 that we're tacking on for the cost of the project potentially. I don't know how inflation is going to go over the next couple of years. We're assuming pretty low inflation right now, but that's kind of sort of the cost that we would be dealing with at that point.
Gotcha. So the longer the legislature pushes it out, the more cost total due to inflation, but the longer time we would have to come up with the shortfall for construction.
That's correct. And the other thing I forgot to mention as well is that we have this legislative session to move the funding back. We have next legislative session to move the funding back, and then that following year is when we would need it. So there's one more bite at the apple potentially next legislative session to move that funding back before we need it for construction. So just something to note.
Okay, that's good to know. To the comment about wasted time, so I think at this point the design cost is the design cost no matter what. But I think to summarize that comment, it was that we ended up studying options that were never going to be feasible, like 16-foot on a side, or we studied completely one-sided options because that would save about 40% of the project cost before we were later told by WashDOT that would not comply with their ADA standards. So that's, I think, to those comments. With that, going back to that conversation of one side versus two, I don't think we're at the point where we're visiting design, but I do want to ask about staging. Has it been looked at to stage the project in a way where we complete one side, say the west side first, as the money is there, and then go back at a later date and complete the east side? That would keep us in budget moving forward, getting at least one side done and connected while the other one is worked on. Not easy, but I'm sorry. Thank you. I got it backwards. I would do the bigger side first, east side first. Yeah.
So the short answer is no, we haven't looked at that.
Okay. Say we'll see how things go. Maybe worth a look. My 2 cents, not having to do the work myself. So appreciate it. And then maybe director work. This one's for you. Just going back to the WashDOT. I know we can't be the only one looking at wider multimodal paths and bridges. I know when bridges are built new, they're built with inspection in mind. That our bridge is a bit unique to the retrofit, but are there any other bridge projects on the horizon in the next 1 to 3 or 4 years in the state that could possibly require a bigger U-bit like this? And I'm thinking about if Bothell or one of the other B cities is considering building a new bridge. We maybe we're splitting costs.
Yeah, I think if you look at the Complete Streets statute that was put out last session. It requires WashDOT to look at complete streets on any project over $500,000. I think it's very likely that retrofitting older structures like this one could put us in that place. Because really, that's why we're here. If you look at 520, some of our newer bridges, the U-bit is out on the shared use path because we designed it to carry those loads. You can't put a U-bit out on this path. You can't design it strong enough to do it. So I think it's very likely, and that's part of the reason why I think the operational cost is absolutely a worst case. If when those come online, you're kind of, there's one other, I'm aware of a sound transit project that is in a similar situation. Other than that, this is kind of groundbreaking. And so no question, the project could be viewed as bearing an unfair brunt here, but it's kind of the timing thing.
Yeah.
Oh, an
so
unfair,
Bremerton is
an
breaking
unfair
ground, yeah.
cost. And so I can see how it could be viewed that way,
Mhm.
but it is a project cost. It is projects driving the need.
Yeah, having an older bridge in a poor diverse city, yeah, we're bearing the cost to bring it up to modern specs. I think the only thing else I just want to add, and I'll stop yapping, is, of course, I've lost it. I'm so sorry. Oh, that's right. I was just going back to the connectors I know it's almost sounds silly to even talk about the connectors when we're already over budget with the rest of the project, but I just want to say this out loud too. I know if we got a couple more bites at the apple showing we're committed to this project, and maybe this is for Public Works Committee, is looking at applying for funds for those connectors and future grant opportunities as there may be possible, just showing our commitment to it and seeing if there's a way we can be a little agile and incorporate those connectors now when they're useful, even if the bridge is existing, or at least show that we're planning concurrent. Maybe I'll just leave that for Public Works Committee for the future, but just want to put that idea out there. And again, it's true thanks again. That live test of the U-bit was really helpful. Great to be there. Really, as somebody who used to have a really severe fear of heights and has gotten incredibly better, thank you, Anna, for for white knuckling it out there.
Any other? Yeah, Jane.
I'm calmer now. Is there a reason why this project needs to pay to rebuild the staircases?
Yeah, so the staircase is just at the north of the bridge and within that tie-in point where we're going to go from wider sidewalks to narrower sidewalks. And they don't meet specifications right now. And we're going to have to tie into them anyway. And we're going to need to alter them with the connection. So that's why we're planning to replace them as part of the project.
Do we have to tie into them? They're not ADA accessible, and any path that we make for a cyclist should be able to, a pedestrian to be on it too.
So there's a landing to the sidewalk, and we're going to be
Mhm.
expanding out the bridge, which means that we're going to be into that landing. And that's all monolithic concrete right there. So it's going to be really difficult for us to tie into that sidewalk there without replacing the landing, which means that we're going to be into the stairs to begin with. So that's why we're assuming at this point we're going to be replacing both set of those stairs.
I'm just asking, do we need stairs? Period. I understand it'd be hard to tie into them,
Okay.
but do we need the stairs? Because that's a pretty big chunk. And
That's a
then,
good question. That's a good question. I don't have the answer for you, and whether or not we haven't looked into whether or not we would need them. I mean, I guess you're taking, and there's already sidewalk that goes around those loops, on the west side, and there's sidewalk that goes around the loop on the east side as well. So I guess it would be lengthening the trip for somebody crossing that bridge to be able to get down to Lebo if they want to get down to Lebo. So, when we were looking into this, we said, okay, we're not going to take away access on this project to anybody. And so that's why they're in there right now. We're going to be in them anyway. But I don't think we considered just removing from the project altogether. I mean, we can.
okay,
That's something that we can do if council wants us to look into that.
What are the current travel lane widths on the Warren Avenue Bridge?
The current travel lane widths are 11 feet. A couple years ago, they used to be 12 feet. A couple years ago, when the state came through with their paver project on 303, it was like 2018 timeframe. The city worked with Washshot to reduce the lane width out there from 12 to 11 to help slow speeds down. And I'm not sure it had much of an effect. We haven't done a study on that.
No effect, really?
Yeah. And it increased and widened the shoulder, and people use that shoulder sometimes. So,
Okay,
yeah.
so we can't use any of that, the shy distance that's there as part of the pedestrian path? Right? Can we,
No.
do we have to, we didn't have it marked out for shy distance before. Do we have to have it marked out now?
We have a cross section for the proposed project that has the minimum amounts of shy distance that would meet the state requirements right now for the bridge when we modify it. And I think it's a 2 foot on the inside, and I think it's a 4 foot on the outside. I have to go back and double check, but we optimized that cross section with the state very early on to be able to optimize the widths of the bridge with the expansion.
So there's
and-
no room for the expanded walkways to be on the existing structure. Everything, are you saying everything for pedestrians and cyclists has to be the new fiberglass sidewalk or whatever? None of it is going to be part of the existing bridge deck structure.
There's probably going to likely be a little bit of overlap there because we are reducing that width. So, which means that we're taking the barrier where it is right now, and we're going to be shifting it in a little bit. So that is a cantilevered section out there, and if we shift that barrier in, then that just means we have a little bit longer of a cantilevered concrete section right in through there. So the answer is yes, we are going to have some of that be part of it, but
But you've maximized how
we've
much.
maximized how much we can. And right now, there's an opportunity to maybe go into the design to see what we can do to optimize it even more. But right now, we're as far as we can go for doing that.
Okay, well, I understand and share Eric's fears that, we have one more year really to try to get this extra money because we can barely pass a school levy. Forget about finding $4 million in the general fund. We did pass it, but it was tough. And $4.5 million is
No.
going to be tough to find if we can't.
I'm going to make a quick point of order. Just a clarification of official results been posted
No.
for that? Okay, so let's not talk about that yet. Okay, all right. Thank
I'm
you.
done.
That for you? Did you get your second go around yet? Okay. Michael.
Hi. I want to make sure we're being part of the solution and not part of the problem. And I feel like we have grasped at straws and we are trying to figure out ways to engineer things. We have a team of engineers, we have all kinds of experts. And I think sometimes we just have to stay in our lane. It's looking in hindsight like what's going to be feasible is pretty much what was in the first presentations to us. And we've already spent an hour on this today, and it's not even happening for a couple hours, years. I'd like us to move on from this.
I appreciate that. Go for it. Take your second. Yeah.
You've done as we asked you to do. You listened to council. Council was very clear that we want to know what all the possibilities are, make it work if you can. I said I saw negotiation here. Some things are fluid. I have the background of a fundraiser. I mean, if I want it, I think that we can make this happen, as all we said was, give us the best you can do. Right. And you're coming to us with these considerations, none of which we know for sure yet. It's going to change next week, probably, or the week after, when we get final results from, what's the state going to do now. And I want to continue. I don't want to shut you down now. Council said, go forth and conquer. You came back with some stuff. It's still part of the process. And I kind of feel like, don't waste my time then making us think that we're going to make something happen if we're just going to shut it down when the least bit of, it might not be able to happen comes in. I said I was feeling positive. Don't make me feel not positive about this. Let's not shut this wonderful relationship and work that we're doing together to try to make something happen. Let's not shut it down. I want to encourage it. So.
And I just want to just briefly let y'all know that I have another follow-up, presumably after the short session is over, the second week of March, the 13th, I believe, is it whatever the study session is that's happening, I think the second week of March, that we're going to circle back to this and talk about just the funding portion of it, and feasibility of just the funding portion. And I want to echo Michael, that I do want to move on. So Anna, you are going to get the last word unless Eric would like to have a final word. So Anna, please just take if you don't mind, a brief last word, and then we'll move on to the next item. Thank you.
Just to say, I think that this could be a lovely thing. Just like the way the Manette Bridge renovation transformed, it's like a gateway to Manette. And just all the time that I spend at Kitsap Transit Board, this corridor is so huge. It's integral to movement throughout the country, throughout the county. There we go. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Great. Thank
We'll
you
see
very
you
much,
in a few
Council.
weeks.
Appreciate it.
Yes. And Mr. Org, thank you for making the time to be with us today. No. Okay. Oh, don't forget. All right. So counselors, do you want to push through, or do you want to take a 5-minute break? I'm just going to, I know Michael's like, push through, or okay, push through or break. Anybody else for a break? Break. Oh, geez, I'm a break. We got what, 4-3? Hey, I guess we don't have consensus, smokers. So next up on the agenda is briefings with Mayor Wheeler. We're going to have him talking about items 1 and 2, which are confirm appointment of Amy Waterman to the Bremerton Parks and Recreation Commission and confirmation of appointment of Cynthia Engelgau Davis to the Bremerton Arts Commission. Oh, Mike, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, just as you have in your packet, I'm requesting confirmation for Amy Waterman and Cynthia Engelgau Davis to the Bremerton Parks and Rec Commission and the Bremerton Arts Commission.
Questions? How do we want to treat it? Consent. Oh, that was so easy. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yes. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Are we doing both items at once or just?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we want to do them? We can do them separately if you'd like, or you can just talk on either one of them during this space.
Okay, I'll talk on B1 with the Parks and Recs Commission. So I noticed the application date was for November 2022, so I guess it's been on file. Were there any other applicants for Parks and Rec Commission?
We do have a few on file, so we thought we'll go back and look and see who's been on file for a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just say my concern is that, so yeah, no concern at all in B2. With B1, they've been in Bremerton less than or just about a year. So back in November 2022. Okay, so now at this point, it's a little over 2 years. I don't see a whole lot of specific experience related to parks. And my kind of concern is, we lost a member on the Parks and Rec Commission who was very engaged and knowledgeable about parks. And this isn't a bad candidate, but I don't know if it's the most knowledgeable or engaged in parks or with the city. I don't want to make sure we find the best candidate. Have we done any outreach for application to commissions and boards, especially Parks and Rec? And just because looking through the city social media and email blasts, I didn't see any specific pushes for, hey, we have open spots on commissions. If you haven't sent an application, please send in another.
Yeah, I do my share when I'm out in the community, encouraging people to sign in. And as and I can't tell you counselors what to do when you hold district meetings or do your community meetings, but you also are free to encourage people to apply for jobs and commission work. So
I'm going to think about this one, but I have concerns without kind of an equitable push for looking at open spots and making sure that we're really getting the best person we can.
Jane, yeah, go right ahead.
I have the same concerns that Jeff does. I'm sure she's a lovely person, but there's nothing in her application that shows that she's has any parks background, or even that she hikes or bikes, or those might all be things that she does.
Mhm.
But usually, on a lot of the boards, it's people have had an active interest in whatever it is. The tree committee, it's arborists apply for it,
right.
that sort of thing.
The two biggest qualifications, and we did interviews, so it looks like Jeff's going to come up, is a desire to serve the city of Bremerton, and they are a citizen resident, and they meet the criteria for that. Jeff?
So I'm getting some consensus on putting Sin Inglegau, just that on the consent agenda. Do we want to handle the Parks and Rec Commission differently? Oh, I'm so sorry. Director Elevato, you're up here to talk to us. I apologize. Come on. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just add that Ms. Waterman was involved in a beautification committee in San Diego for several years. She expressed that she had lots of involvement with volunteer organizations. She comes from a technical background and a writing background. She also comes from an area in the city that we don't currently have representation on the park board. So those were areas that we considered. We also considered other applicants. One happened to be out of the area, out of the city of Bremerton, didn't qualify. And the other one happened to be an Olympic College person. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm confusing that with the arts one.
Yeah.
So we did have several. We also felt that there were a number of applicants that were still on file waiting for a spot, and they hadn't been contacted. So we reached out to several to find out who was still interested, and Ms. Waterman expressed her interest.
Very much, Director Elevato. Okay, counselors, it seems like we have general consensus for send Inglegau Davis to Arts Commission. Do we want to do anything different with the Amy Waterman from Parks and Rec Commission appointment?
I guess I don't have any experience with public works, and yet I'm on the public works committee. I bring a lot of I saw this woman, I got to be honest with you, I was very impressed with her professional skill set. She's got finance background. She's got PR and communications experience. I mean, that could in itself could be a strength. And I think especially on a commission where sometimes communications and all that kind of stuff run a little bit of ground, I think that might be a real asset. I don't want to use my opportunity for pushback with the mayor and commissions on this one. I just think it's overall, I think she'd be somebody we really want to have involved with the city. And that's usually through committees and commissions. And she also talked about the environment, that she has a passion for the arts and the environment, which of course is closely connected to Parks and Rec. So I wouldn't be supportive of her holding her back. So I think it sends the wrong message.
So just to follow up, how many folks were interviewed for the Parks Commission spot? Three. Okay. That's fine. Okay.
And that was from various, we actually did an outreach to two. One determined that they were out of city and the other one was not interested anymore. So,
Okay. So we had two viable applicants.
interviewed two,
Yeah.
yes.
One was that? Okay. To meet the in-city requirements. Okay. So two viable applicants. We chose one. That makes me feel a little better. I'm not going to die on this hill. I'm just going to make the request to use the city social media and an email system to just send out another reminder for all commissions and committees that they're open, and we encourage applications. I've done it with my personal council social and folks I run into, but don't have as wide a reach as the official city comms. So
I'd like to go ahead and just ask, can we go ahead and put this item on the consent agenda? Okay.
Yes.
All right. We're going to move on to the next item.
I'm okay with that now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So next up, we have Sergeant Ryan Heffernan here to present amendment number 6 to the agreement with Kitsap County for the incarceration of city prisoners. Was this discussed at public safety? Oh, you weren't there. Was it? Yes. Okay. Do you have a quick briefing ahead of time to let us know about this item? And then I'll turn it over to Sergeant Heffernan. No briefing, or did you give the head nod for it? Okay. All right. Sergeant Heffernan, go right ahead.
I appreciate it. So this amendment pertains to the city's agreement with Kitsap County for the incarceration of prisoners. The current agreement was executed in 2018. That was for a 1-year term. Since then, we've executed yearly amendments to the agreement. So this will be the 6th one. Through these amendments, the base rate for incarceration has been increased several times, 2019, 20, and 21. But it's remained constant since then at $157 for a bed day. And that rate continues to remain the same under this newest amendment. There's no other changes.
Council, how do we want to treat this item? Consent. Thank you for sticking around and learning all that you did about the bridge while you were here. Yeah. Love it. Okay. And we have Ms. Ketterer up next. Katie Ketterer with Public Works Project Manager, here to present item 5, professional services agreement with Consor. Hope I said that right. Consor North America, Inc. for construction management and inspection services for the Quincy Square project. Was this discussed at Public Works or any other committee? Was it? I'm just making sure that that we gave the head nod for it at the committee level. Okay, thank you. Ms. Ketterer, go right ahead.
Good evening, Council. So Quincy Square is moving forward. We have a tentative bid date for the construction in towards the end of March. So one of the things that we'll need along with construction is construction management and inspection services. We selected Consor to provide those services for us. This is the contract for those services. It's valued at $372,195.23. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Counselors, how do you want to? Go right ahead.
Before on any projects?
We have not used Consor before. I do believe that they are providing some engineering services for one of our energy management for the wastewater treatment plant.
Mhm.
But that's kind of a slightly different procurement way. But they came with a lot of references. I called and spoke with a couple of their references, and they came with good reviews.
Okay. If you're comfortable with them, that's good.
Donna.
You just see subtask 2.7 project closeout is named.
All right, how do we want to treat this item, y'all? Consent, thank you. Okay, and thank you very much, Ms. Ketterer. Next up, we have Financial Services Director Mike Riley here to present item 6, Tourism Promotion Services Agreement with Westbrook Maine Consulting LLC to provide consulting services on the impact of Lodging Tax Advisory Committee funding uses in Bremerton. So we've discussed this already a few times, y'all. We already gave the head nod. Mike's, Denise, have we given the head nod for this item, for this budgetary item through LTAC? We talked about it.
We have, but we didn't vote on it.
Right.
And so it's the extra, it's the, how much is it? $4,000. And so it's like, we're trying to push this uphill and we're almost there.
I think you just did Mike's entire presentation. So, Director Riley, yeah, go right ahead.
So I'll be real fast. It's housekeeping to amend the budget to add $4,000 to spend out of the general fund. $5,500.
Oh,
There.
I'm sorry.
So I thought it was 4.
How do we want to treat this? Consent it
question.
is.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Since-
Yes, go right ahead.
Councilmember Goodnow and I were not part of these discussions during the LTAC allocation process. I just wanted to
okay,
check
thank
how
you.
they were selected as the consultant. That's all. No objection to the money.
Yeah. How they were selected, I think, is very much like the Quincy Square consultant that was just so well qualified for that particular job. Lori Main, as many of you may know, used to run the conference center for a period of time. And while she was here, she worked very closely with the city, of course, and city staff were very impressed. I happened to work with her when I was at the Chamber of Commerce. I was very impressed. This is her wheelhouse, and she's now a private consultant. And so she's willing to do this and able to set aside the time to do this. I think we're in really good hands. She's kind of a big fish in a small, it's, we're going to get a lot more than $16,000 or whatever it is worth of services from her. So that's kind of how she was selected. It was fully discussed at LTAC. The hoteliers especially really want this to happen. They want the hard data. They want to know what impact those dollars are having in Bremerton. So it was the hoteliers and consensus.
Did that answer your question as to how this consultant was contracted?
It did. Thank you. And we didn't have to go to bid. And that's because of a certain dollar amount. Okay. Great.
Any other questions, counselors? Okay. Oh, yes. Michael.
I'm sorry, I'm behind on this or was away from the table for this, but like my only concern is, and I think really highly of Lori Main, but she was very much, she believed that all of LTAC should have went to the conference center.
I never.
Or a majority of it. Like,
yeah, I never
why.
heard her say that. I think that.
Because I was chairing LTAC.
Yeah. Oh.
When she was still working here.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I just want to.
Well, I think that her job is to maximize impact in dollars, and she understands that business from that perspective. She might have, when asked a question, she might have said with the current information she has or whatever.
You don't need to imagine what she might have said.
Yeah.
So
I don't get that. I don't get that from her, just as I don't get.
I'm going on record to say what I said. That's all.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. And so, counselors, how do we want to treat this item? Consent's fine?
consent.
We can do general business if you want, Michael. Okay, we already did. We already talked about it. Consent it is. All right. Thank you very much. Next up. Flip it over. I have a 25 slide presentation to give just real quick.
Oh, God.
No, we're down to general counsel business. So audit committee chair, Anna Mockler, provide a summary of the highlights from the last meeting held on January 29th, please, and thank you.
Thank you. I was reelected as chair. Deborah McDaniel was reelected as vice chair. The landlord license compliance project that Auditor Sims has been working on is wrapping up. It may already have been handed over to IT. The next item is a specific procurement task reviewing bid splitting since the dollar limit was raised in 2022 for procurement, and meetings have been set for the fourth Monday at 5 p.m.
Well, it does say to ask Denise, but who?
Michael has already said that
Michael,
he would do
you're
it.
you're on it. Highlights from Public Safety Committee.
So similarly, a lot of housekeeping. We elected Denise as the chairperson, serving as chair, vice chair.
Whatever it is. Yeah.
And we had some quick updates. One of the issues was we had a meeting date change. So that judge could participate. So we had some quick updates. One was, of course, what we just also we did get a little bit of an update on just like the house folks and like that, but we don't have minutes yet.
I think our updates were things that you and I had seen on social media.
Oh yeah.
Gave us some information that is limited, and there's still about shooting outside of city limits. Here's County and the FBI. He said now with the change in the state law, information is very limited in the outside finishing investigation, and that the family is notified. There was a few things swirling around.
Wasn't a formal agenda.
Yeah, but he gave a good explanation.
Thank-
And the other was.
Thank you. And next up, Vice President Mockler and Councilor Coughlin. Are you prepared to give a report out of the AWC?
Mhm.
Okay. Wonderful.
I'm gonna hold off on any jokes there. Oh yes, you can go first. Yeah, sorry, I thought you looked at me as okay.
Not making a joke.
I'm gonna make a joke because I'm making a joke about college, but go for it.
Most interesting thing about AWC, I thought, was talking to the other councilors and mayors and city managers who were attending there. There was an interesting workshop on how to make meetings run smoothly. And I thought it was really interesting that there was only a city manager and a city attorney on that panel. Whereas I think councilors have a tendency to want meetings to run productively. City managers and city attorneys want everything to go perfectly. That's my hypothesis. One really interesting thing, since everyone is working on the comp plan, is people were talking about how their council had been involved in every element of the comp plan from the beginning, not just at the county level, but regular input and back and forth with the planning commission and the council. There was also great surprise that we had not hired a consultant, because people were just like, how can your planning department possibly do anything else other than the comp plan? You have to have a consultant. Something that was really lovely, this is almost the end of my AWC report, was how many people were jumping up and they had been newly elected and they were full of fire and vinegar. And yet at the same time, they had a very granular grasp of wastewater and infrastructure and changing populations and how to best serve people. So that was kind of thrilling. On balance, I would say that, and Governor Inslee came. On balance, I would say this was much less rich than the previous AWC on every level. It wasn't, instead of having the hotel and the conference rooms all in one place, we had to like sugar-liberate around. And there were no breakout sessions, which were some of the features I loved at AWC. Everything took place in one enormous cafeteria, fluorescent lit room. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have for right now. The lobbying itself was interesting because we were pulling people off the floor, and they had been telling us for about like that whole morning, keep it down to a minute, keep it down to a minute. And this was good for me. Sorry, I said it was at the end, almost at the end. So Jeff and I, while waiting for Council President Chamberlain to come on down, made our list, which was Warren Avenue now. And then we asked for the 500K. I did some research, and instead of just asking for behavioral health, it was like, how many chemical detox beds do we need on the Kitsap Peninsula? And people got back to me and they were like 24 to 40 beds. So my innovative technique was to ask for 50. Nobody got back to me on what exactly behavioral health co-response teams would look like or how many we might need. So I simply mentioned them. Thank you.
Fill in any gaps, but first of all, it's a pleasure doing the Deed in Olympia with you, advocating, and when you showed up for a third council president, it made it even more interesting. So just want to appreciate that. All right. SB 5770. That is a reference to last week's meeting, which I did watch.
Thanks,
was
Jeff.
excellent. All right. Mm-hmm.
You're gonna break Kylie. You know that.
I know. Poor Kylie. I'm getting it out now instead of the general meeting.
Oh, that's the one where I talked about smoking weed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And yeah.
Definitely.
I had fun watching that recording. Yes.
What did you say there? All right.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, not too much to add. Maybe more on the bill side. All right. Senate Bill 5770, which I know folks discussed while I was out, was the ability for cities to raise from 1% to as high as 3% tied to inflation and enact that councilmatically for extra revenue. And that, if you didn't get see the news, that did not make it to the floor for a vote. So options for us to raise revenue, and the cost of with increasing costs and more demand for city services just gets tougher. The Fix Our Ferries bill by Rep. Nance on the 23rd, HB 2497, seems to have a large, broad support. He's pulled in people all across the spectrum. And so that is hopefully moving forward for an oversight commission that includes not only experts, but also ferry riders. And I don't want to say not only experts, expert ferry riders, expert staff that run the ferries, not just folks within WashDOT. So that is excellent. Piggybacking on yours, even at our worst of times between each other and us and directors and mayor, we don't come close to some cities out there, is what I heard on that council do's and don'ts. There were some horror stories that were told that just made me go, holy cow, I can't even imagine us ever coming that close. So
it's like a kid that gets busted. It's not as bad as what Johnny.
Yeah. Doesn't excuse, but holy cow, horror stories. On the note, great dinner. Again, thanks to Mayor Becky for Paulsbo taking out to dinner. Ann and I got to go to that along with council members from everywhere except Port Orchard, but Port Orchard had Mayor Rob. And so every one of the 4 cities was there. Yeah. Actually from Bainbridge. So that was nice. And that was actually good ferry talk because 2 of our reps were there. Other takeaways: state budget forecast I characterize as mildly optimistic. It's just, it sounds like, hey, things will stop changing night and day every other year for us. So fingers crossed. You mentioned everything else there. I think that was it. It was very useful, but it was a much scaled down due to the venue.
Thank you very much for doing good deeds for the city of Bremerton.
You went down there, didn't you?
In Olympia. Yes, I also went down. And I missed dinner. I was busy. Sorry, I had a meeting to go to. But this is not like I've been down to lobby before. And so I think like and I'm sorry if I'm like being negative about things. I think that I you never know what's going to happen when the session ends, but I've just kind of like learned that sometimes these legislators already know what they're going to vote for. We're up against a lot. And so my perception of the feedback that I was given is my perception, and it's based on experience I'm not a pro, I'm not like a professional lobbyer, but I've been with a lot of different kinds of groups out there. It's probably like my 20th time going to Olympia over the years, But hey, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope I get to buy y'all pizza, and I hope we get moved up in the biennium. But other than that, I have nothing else to share. Fantastic meeting. A couple of new folks that I'd never met before. So next up on the general council business, it says here that I'm supposed to remind you about, we have another meeting coming up, apparently, the joint planning session is what it says, but our joint planning session, our retreat, which is going to be on February 24th, 9 to 3:30. Is there anybody who's not going to make it? Is everybody going to make the retreat? Okay, great. Okay, good. I got as many goals and priorities as people wanted to send. If you didn't want to send them, you didn't. You're adults. And but I got a lot of good stuff from all of you, and I look forward to facilitating. I'm going to say that and stay positive. I'm going to say that in the mirror. I look forward to facilitating the meeting. But really, it's been such a valuable experience to do that with y'all for the past couple of years. So I really am looking forward to being part of the process with you, on creating our vision for next year, and also looking back and seeing how much success we've made. So, are there any other council members assigned? Does anybody have any questions? Because while I'm talking about any other questions about the joint planning session that I might be able to answer for you right now, it's probably going to be I don't know, but I can answer food.
Is that that is an important question. And
I'm going to have a yogurt parfait bar in the morning with fresh fruit. Make your own sandwich and salad for lunch. And there's going to be like an energy bar snack. There will be coffee.
I used to do cookies.
But I mean, that's not the most important part, but I know it's important for folks. So.
It is important.
And this is also a public reminder too, if there's department heads that can make it, that haven't confirmed, please, for our food count, do that too. Okay.
So if the public wants to, they can come and watch. Is it on Zoom or anything for them to watch? It is on Zoom.
There will be a Zoom option. Okay. I mean, and so the Zoom option will still be available. If there's an emergency with us, we can still attend by Zoom as well.
Okay.
But hopefully there's no emergencies that'll preclude you from being, hopefully, the public can come, but they cannot offer, this is publicly for all of y'all. We're going to do this at the conference center. And so for those of you in Bremerton, you can just come on down and sit in the back, sit in the sidelines, and join us in that. You just won't be able to offer any public comment on any of the items or offer any suggestions or anything like that. And you might need to cover your own lunch. I don't know the rules on that. Sorry. Okay. Any other questions about the retreat at this point in time? Okay. Next up, we can talk about any other regional or other committees or boards. Jeff.
For you, keep them quick. Puget Sound Regional Council, thanks for letting me fill in on the specific focused ferry update. If folks didn't see the email, the letter from PSRC basically urging the governor for action on ferries, was sent in. If any folks haven't, feel bad saying it, but there's 3 council members who haven't signed on. There's still time should you choose and wish to sign on. Yeah.
And I'm glad to know that because I thought I had till Friday and then I was bummed that I missed it. Okay.
I know folks are busy, but I also don't want to pressure if someone doesn't agree with the letter. They're of course not forced to sign, but that option is still open. They're going to update the list of signatories as it goes on. That's our PSRC, KRCC board. Great presentation on PSRC's racial equity work to KRCC and kind of highlighting racist covenants in the past. Look for a Kitsap Sun article that came out a couple weeks ago. Highlight some of that. And then mainly focused on the rest of it with the with Transpol and the grants coming down. So I think we've already identified 6th Street and 11th Street as 2 grants we're putting in. We can do up to 4, but then we're competing against ourselves a bit too. I think the biggest takeaway is I'm optimistic because a lot of the grants that they're focusing on is multimodal transportation investments, reducing reliance on enforcement for speed design, improve pedestrian safety, facilities for pedestrian and bicycle safety, and reduce barriers to use. So, and connecting centers like Charleston and East Side Village and downtown. So, fingers crossed on those grants as we go through the year. Oh.
Judge Flood has a question for me. Okay.
Council President,
Yes,
I heard
yes,
you
ma'am.
mention the retreat on Saturday, but I didn't quite hear if there was an agenda.
So a council retreat will have an agenda, and it's going to be pretty standard from year to year where we just, the first part of the day is we talk about all the goals and priorities. And then the second half of the day, we kind of, we narrow it down. And so if you can come, that would be great. There might be some items related to public safety, but I don't have a specific agenda today. I'm working through the weekend to get that out, but this is our council retreat. So, did that answer your question? No, I don't.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Do you have any other meetings?
There was one more that.
Yes. Thank you, Jeff.
Through KRCC, PSRC is working on a regional safety action plan. And so this is a study they're conducting, and it's going to start at like a regional scale analysis, then filter down to local recommendations. And it's, from my understanding, it's any sort of data that involves any sort of vehicle activity that they have. So they're going to start selecting consultants basically already and then engage throughout this year. So I think that's basically a free study we'll eventually get to help inform planning.
You mentioned PSRC, Jeff. Was there anything special we needed to share out about KRCC?
All except the ferries was through KRCC.
Oh, I'm sorry. I heard PSRC.
A lot was PSRC folks presenting at the KRCC meeting. So
gotcha. Okay. So okay. Thank you very much. All right. Any other regional or other committee boards to? Yeah, Anna.
Up transit. We had 2 meetings, so I'm going to try to shorten it as much as possible. The main thing that was really handy to have somebody from Bremerton on the board, because they were saying, well, actually the fast ferry takes twice as long from Bremerton as anywhere else. So if we're going to raise fares, we should raise them to Bremerton. So that got quashed, or I spoke and then it got quashed. That might be coincidence, but I don't think so. At the most recent Kitsap Transit Association, this I thought is a little interesting because off-duty Bremerton Police Department officers assist with traffic at 127.4 K per year. They're in talks with Kitsap County to transfer this to county sheriffs, which I, in my uneducated, untrained way, think would be great, because the more time that Bremerton Police Department can spend being Bremerton police officers, the better for us. So I didn't say anything, but I'm just saying it to you guys. Really exciting things happened, like Transit Appreciation Day resolution was read, but the most important The only other thing is I'm elected as an alternate to the PSRC Transit Board and Transit Caucus. I'll be appearing next month when Mayor Rob Patansu cannot. And sorry, saving the best for last. I speak up every few months about extending dial-a-ride to Bremerton. And, you know, people just go to her. But with Christine Rolfus on the board and with Clarence Metawaki also newly on the board, they were like, yes, we should totally be bringing dial-a-ride to Bremerton. And this is exciting, not just for the immediate access it will bring, but because that's how they figure out where to put new routes. Not just where, but how often. So I'm having coffee with Director Clausen and they're putting it on a study session agenda. I know. All right.
Sunday thing, but it's just like one.
It's, yeah.
See the value of it.
Yeah. No kidding. Yeah.
Inanna, is there a new chair of Kitsap Transit?
Mayor Wheeler.
Yeah, we're gonna check the results now.
Thank you so much. Any other reports, regional committees? Okay. And any other general council business? Go to the order. Yeah, Anna. Sure thing.
So I've been asking that we start sending around like a letter to department heads saying in 30 or 60 days, we're going to start enforcing the agenda bill policy. And this will be short. And for me, this would mean that the packet would be complete on Friday afternoon, you know, barring emergencies like sinkholes or fires. And we would have time to look at it and to ask clarifying questions. And it would not just make meetings shorter, but it would make meetings more to the point. We wouldn't have to, you know, like stare at small type, for example, as we had to do in the first item. There's a good argument to be made for, instead of having a policy, just having a network of good working relationships with personnel, you know, with staff. For me, the argument in favor of actually having a policy is that it becomes normal, and that when there is a new council, it continues to be normal. And so if anyone is interested in supporting me in this, please let me know.
I haven't had any problems with what Anna's speaking about since I've been here. So everybody's been pretty timely and efficient with getting me materials. As far as I know from Christine, there hasn't been any kind of slips in that since, you know, for this year. So yeah, Jane.
Well, it would have been like, we had a pretty long presentation today that was difficult to read, and that I feel should have been in our packet so we could have not only reviewed it ahead of time, but also be able to read it.
Yeah, and so I was thinking about that. And part of the problem with not enforcing it to have a packet in by Friday is sometimes there's new information that's coming in Monday. So the information that they're presenting could be outdated if they have new information that comes in on a Monday or Tuesday. So the materials should be in our packet for our council meeting, but when it comes to a presentation that's in flux, how do you want me to handle that? I mean, because I don't want them to have to give you something, have to submit it Friday if there's going to be new information they're going to get on Monday or Tuesday. So,
well, they could send in an amended one.
Okay.
Or just say on Friday, you know, we expect to get A, B, and C from these other people. So on Monday we'll send it, or Tuesday, just so
I think it
time in advance before the meeting.
Well,
and then to read along.
I think and I think I totally understand. I think what would have been helpful was to have I haven't looked at my emails since about 4:45. So did we get a copy of the presentation from? Okay. Yeah. And so Kylie has her hand up. Let me go ahead and defer to her. The collective. Yes, Do I have a representative from the collective?
One of the issues with giving our presentations to you beforehand is that many people like to walk people through their presentation and explain what's on the slide. The slide is not meant to be read in a vacuum on your own. It can actually even be confusing or something. It's a part of the presentation of the material. And so I think that's one of the, I guess what the collective would say, the reason we don't want to provide it ahead of time is so that we can walk through the slide presentation. So if there's a presentation and there's often accompanying, like a contract or something like that, that gets put in the packet. But then the presentation, the PowerPoint, is what we are using to present that information to you. I mean, otherwise, why do we even come? I mean, if we could just send everything to you and just wait and see what you do with it, right? Right. No, but that's what I'm saying is like sending it all ahead of time. If there's things on there that if you don't have the context and you can't explain it, it makes you just say, well, just never mind. I'm just not going to include it. So that would be what was that?
And a presentation isn't part of the agenda bill required materials. So the presentation itself isn't required to be submitted as whole. And Michael, I saw you.
If I'm presenting that the presentation's myself in person presenting, and that's just like a handout. It's like an extra piece. It's a visual aid. It's whatever. But also, if I'm presenting, I don't want folks looking ahead at stuff and then misinterpreting or something. I want the chance to introduce the information to you, and then you'd like a copy of it. I'm happy to send it to you. So. When I teach classroom stuff, I don't like to pass out information because people get distracted. So I want them to listen to me speak.
Denise.
So one and half a dozen of another, because I think I totally get what you're saying, Kylie. And it's not fair to us to be walked through a presentation live and be expected to process it, digest it, have thought about it, and ask questions. And so what it does is it stalls. And that's why sometimes we go back to another study session. And so if y'all are cool about hearing from Denise, sorry, I didn't have a chance to think too much, but now I want another study session. I think I know the rolls of the eyes that I would get with that, because we've got a grant deadline, or we've got this, or we've got that, because it's wait, hurry up, council. And so I think what I'm saying is I'm not getting enough when I see an agenda bill with absolutely nothing behind it, and I'm expected to use a verbal presentation to think of immediate questions. It doesn't work for my style of processing, and the issues that we're dealing with are too important. So if there could be some kind of, I'd be happy by Monday night if we had it. But then I have a different schedule than everybody else does. I could review it in that amount of time. I do believe that when, and I say this as being a culprit myself, when I was staff, if the deadline's then, and I know I don't have to give a presentation until Wednesday, and I don't have to send that presentation out before, then my deadline is Wednesday. And that's not right. That's just abusing. I think it's expecting us to make.
I think what you're going to see is less PowerPoint presentations and more oral presentations. I think they'll scrap presentations.
Turn your mic on, Michael. What were you saying again? Can you repeat it for the public?
I think we might run into situations where we would actually see less presentations because of that.
Yeah,
I disagree. I mean, look at what Katie is sending us. I mean, and other groups. It's like, we had I wasn't on council then, but it was really difficult when everybody was trying to understand what the police and fire levy was because it was an oral presentation. And so they came back again and they had numbers down, and then the council could see it and say, okay. And I think a lot of these things too, the public's interested in knowing. And there are members of the public who read our agenda packets too, because they call me up the day of. So, and I get it. It's not like every single time you're going to be able to. I fully get that. But I think that the majority of the time, we should have it in our packet, not just a blank page. We're going to talk to you tonight.
And I think we do. And the council president has said it's not currently an issue. So.
Well, it's not an issue for her.
Well, let me, now that we're pointing the fingers at me, no, I mean, I don't agree that they need to have a PowerPoint. So I guess there's nothing precluding you at the time. We have the email our questions to these department heads if we have questions to process. That's and they've been super responsive to us. Working well. So make sure you can hear you because people want to hear us.
Ask.
Right. Well, no. When you get to the study session, you're given a presentation. You leave. We work all week at this job technically, but we also have our own lives. We also have part-time jobs and so on. But when you dedicate your time to council time each day or whatever you do, that's when you should process and think about the questions you have for each of these agenda items. Having been in education for quite a while, I can tell you that it's not standard to have like a PowerPoint presentation ahead of time. And an agenda bill gives us the hot points. Now, if you're asking for something like an agenda of that item, I can understand that. Do you know what I mean? Like here are the hot points we're going to hit on for this meeting. But at the same time, I mean, working all the, these presentations can be fluid. And just like the presentation we received today, there was some new information that they received after having a meeting that they, with WashDOT. So they couldn't give us the same deliverable on Friday that they were able to give to us today. And I absolutely agree. There will be less PowerPoint presentations delivered. No, not shame on them. It's sinkers. It's not shame on anybody. That's just how it is. It's not a matter. I mean, there's more deadlines. There's so many deadlines to meet. Our study session is important, but there's so many projects in flux that having to navigate between all these projects to get all the newest information possible and the best, most quality information that they can so that they don't get yelled at by us, which we've been doing on a regular basis for a year. They're trying. They're trying.
So hang on. Deteriorating this conversation. I'm concerned about that. We're simply a council that is requesting information related to an agenda bill before study session, if possible. And I don't think I wouldn't be in a finance committee that didn't give me finances before to review. I wouldn't get, committees review. I think it's a policy we already have. It's a policy we already have.
I'm going to defer to Director Riley, then to Anna, then to Director Nucky.
So yeah, just to add some perspective. So tonight, just a reminder, tonight was a information only item.
Yeah.
So we weren't asking you to make a decision. We were bringing information for you to digest at a later date. So I'll just bring that tonight. And so that was a PowerPoint presentation with nothing behind it, and that's why. I think administration, we fully understand you want more data behind the packets. And I think we owe that to you, or the contract, some context. I'm not comfortable providing my PowerPoint presentation to the council a week and a half early before I've really developed it fully. I don't want you leading your way through it. That's my document to help lead the context of what you have in your packet. Let me lead the discussion so I can maybe answer your questions before you have them. That's how I use a PowerPoint. So packets are required to be in the Monday prior to the following Wednesday. So I'm still working on that. After I got all the contracts and the agenda bill done and done all the minutia that takes to get that loaded, I'm still working on that PowerPoint the entire week and probably into the weekend and into Monday talking with Tom. Hey, what do we do here? Oh, we got new information. Let's get that in our presentation. So I'm working on that. I'm not comfortable. That's not how I like to lead that conversation with PowerPoint. It's just a tool. It's not the documents. And then two, we still work on those. So you're really compressing a lot of time if we're trying to load that in. You've already read it. Now we're answering questions that we might have got to. So that's just, I think, from my perspective and some of my coworkers and Tom can probably speak to it too, because he builds a lot of presentations. So and the time it takes to put those all together and really vet those. So, but that's just my piece. So thank you.
One way to look at this that is not deteriorating is that we have different types of learning. Some people really like to listen to podcasts and they really they're able to absorb news and information through their ears. I cannot. I mean, only in the most limited sense. So if information is being given to me that's like an hour, if that Warren Avenue Bridge presentation had all been new to me, I would have retained virtually nothing of it. So here we just have different learning styles. I understand, I was a professor for many years. I understand it's really fun to just like burst out and go, here it is. But we're not trying just to learn it. We also need to ask questions so that we can follow the timeline so that we're not slowing you guys down, in your workflow. I think if you think about it as there are visual people, audio, what's the word I want? There you go. Thank you. Auditory. And then there are people who really only absorb information from reading it, and from reading PowerPoint presentations. And I must say that I'm certain every member of this council will agree with me that at least 90% of all PowerPoint presentations consist of someone reading each word of the PowerPoint. So, yeah. So this might be another way for people to enjoy doing their presentations where they could just give you the gist. Thank you.
Want to ask our former council presidents that have been here. Okay. Have you ever? Hey, come on in, Mayor Wheeler. This is good. This is good.
Say that again on the mic.
I think you could be included in this conversation. I want to hear from these former presidents about your feelings about requiring department heads to give their PowerPoint presentations as part of the packet.
I'm happy to keep my thoughts short. The agenda bill policy is 99% an administration policy that's governing how the mayor's staff will submit stuff to council. If there are changes, after the deadline of Thursday, Friday on the council's packet, that's council president's purview. I don't think in my tenure I ever got a request that was unreasonable or anything. I think I basically, it was nothing where it was a whole new item that didn't have a good reason for coming in. So I just want to put that out there, and the council president has the leadway that they need to do that. Besides that, my thoughts are staff should present the way they feel they're going to get feedback from us. If I think they're listening to everything and should adjust accordingly if able, but if they want something to go smoothly, they know us, they know the questions we're going to ask. If I'm seeing something really big that I've never seen before last second, going to take a pause, hopefully, and not rush the meeting and go through it. And so it may take longer, and they know that. But I think it's totally up to staff how they want to present, and they've heard everyone's individual feedback.
Okay, so I was thinking of how I was going to answer this. And first I was going to say, I'm going to draw on my 5 years experience. So this is going to be a lengthy discussion, but the answer was either going to be no, or I'm going to go with what Jeff said and just say ditto.
Michael? Oh, I guess I already kind of know your
Well,
feeling, but
Yeah, I'd say ditto. It's just not a problem. The a packet comes together, and if something needs to be changed or added or pulled, it comes to the council president and with an explanation. It's like going in front of the principal's office and it gets explained. So again, I don't see this as a problem. As far as learning styles, that's why we get it presented a week before we take any action on it. So there is time to, review documents, ask more questions. We're not in a vacuum. We don't just do this meeting and then, get put up on a shelf and they bring us out next Wednesday. So.
okay.
Benefit of exchange with that. However, we don't have the benefit of all of it.
Okay. All right. No, I mean, it's not a matter of 3 to 4. What I really would like to do is come up with some kind of collaborative solution, but I'm going to give the last words to y'all and then ask if there's any more good of the order. But thank you for the conversation, Anna. I appreciate it.
Just a quick comment. So a lot of what I was going to say, actually, Mike already covered, but specific to the presentation tonight, there was no action associated with that. And to be honest with you, there's no way we could have provided that, a week early. It wouldn't have happened. We would have pushed this meeting out 2 weeks. This is a very important topic. We wanted to make sure that we weren't holding back information. The report from WashDOT we got last week. We had a meeting with WashDOT on that on Monday of this week. So we were trying to put that out as timely as we could. And I can tell you that, just today, Shane was working on some of the costs to make sure that the escalation was appropriate. So if we have a hard deadline like that, we're going to be delaying things. I mean, it's going to impact us, it's going to slow things down. It won't be helpful.
Yeah, Director Riley, and then yeah, go right ahead.
All right, thank you. Just for real quick. So I think we all have heard the request from council. So I will say, I think we can do have an approach to providing information that's in the packet that maybe provides a summary level that is digestible early. It's probably not going to be the PowerPoint, but something that drives you to the key points, that at least has takeaways from a contract, from a discussion, a budget that would maybe be more digestible. So when you come here, you feel like you're more informed. I think we've tried to move toward that. I've seen some meetings where there was nothing. It was all just verbal. So to respect everybody's learning style, and they really want to have an informed discussion. I personally will take that challenge and try to bring some of the council at that level. It will not have a nice P in the document that says PowerPoint, but it'll be a Word document, something that will help support your agenda packet. Hopefully that will help. So.
Dan, I'm gonna let you have the last word on this. And well, I might take one quick last word at the call us close, but go right ahead.
So if I understand this right, internally, you need to have your agenda packet ready 10 days before our meeting. Is that correct? So I think, yeah, they're saying the Monday before. So it's 10.
Yeah.
I think all that anybody, at least for me, all that I'm asking for is that even if it's a half hour before the meeting, to have it, if there's a PowerPoint, I mean, I couldn't see anything. And we're readers. I couldn't see one thing on that presentation up there. So if those are just sent so we can go along and see it, I think that's the information that would be really helpful. And my understanding prior to this whole conversation was that you didn't have to have your packet ready until Friday. So that's my error. I didn't know that it was the Monday before.
Isn't that when Christine stops accepting?
When she publishes it, and then so once in a while there can be additions.
Steps.
Mhm.
It doesn't go straight to Christine.
Agenda for policy goes on and on. All right.
Okay, so I definitely want to get out of here before 7:30. And I appreciate the conversation, Anna, and she's referring specifically to a reply that I made by email. I don't think we need to send a letter to department heads saying that giving them an ultimatum, because they're doing it. They're doing their job, as far as I know, as far as I've been here, and as validated by former council presidents here at this table. And so I don't want there to be any rumor that they're not, because they're doing their job. They're doing a great job. And with that, let me look at my script. Do I do anything besides gavel it closed? Oh yeah, I've got to read to you about our next meeting, because we're going to have our next council meeting on Wednesday, February 21st, beginning at 5:30 on the first floor meeting chambers with a remote option available by Zoom. The public is welcome to attend in person or remotely. And any special accommodations, such as wanting to speak via Zoom during public recognition, I'm going to repeat that. If you would like to speak during public recognition via Zoom, please email or please call our city clerk at 360-473-5323 at least 24 hours prior to the meeting, and we'll make it happen for you. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Good night. Go get your key.